All righty, good evening, 6:30. Welcome to the Village of Mamaroneck Board of Trustees Budget Work Session for April 23rd, 2020. We'll begin the meeting, and I think we were going to be going into executive session to talk about individuals and the employment and the job performance of various individuals in the Village of Mamaroneck. What is the section of the law that I need to cite?
Be 105(1)(f) of the New York State Public Officers Law.
Yes.
As it relates to review of specific employees or employees.
Do we need to open the meeting first?
Yeah, we
Yes.
did. I make a motion. No, I make a motion to open the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I make a motion to go into executive session to talk about the employment history of certain individuals under 105(1)(f) of the New York Public Officers Law. I made the motion.
Second.
Okay, Kelly got there first. Augie, call roll.
Trustees Lucas,
Yes.
Winter,
Yes.
the four,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Okay, now we're going to have a call-in number.
Yes, it was emailed to everyone earlier.
Okay, so we should all mute our mics and close our computers. Is that correct?
Just mute your mic.
Just mute my mic. Okay. I'm going to mute my mic. Everybody mute their mics.
So I'm relying on this for looking at the Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And my charger is not working. So if you see me dive under the table and do crazy stuff,
Oh,
Okay.
you're always doing that.
you know what's going on.
Okay, let me get back in my seat.
Hey, Nora, do you use an Apple?
No.
Oh.
No.
I
We
was
had,
gonna tell you- I was
we
going to
had-
tell you there's such an easy way to convert these things to PDFs. I was going to tell you how, but
we have printouts. So the spreadsheets that we're probably going to use tonight, we got them in when we got all of our capital budget sheets.
okay.
We're
Right.
like legal size.
Yep. We're getting updated stuff all the time. And so,
But I don't think that we're not dealing with updated capital budget sheets, right?
That's correct. We're not.
It's the
Okay.
same paper sheet we got in the beginning of March.
We're
Thank you.
dealing with 6-week-old numbers, which is
Could be 200 years old.
right. That's right.
It only feels like 200 years.
That's right.
Okay, everybody back online?
yeah, we're good.
Okay, I didn't end the executive session. I need a motion to end the executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Jerry, you want to take us down the capital budget trail?
I was hoping we could just cut to the chase.
Okay,
All of the information that we did, all of the work that we did and the information that we provided gives you more detail regarding the capital budget needs of this village probably than any other time in the history of the village. What we obviously probably have to talk about is what is required by law, what we are mandated to do, what we are forced to do, and what we are not forced to do. In my mind, and everyone has their own method of doing this, The way I used the criteria scale that was provided by the comptroller's office was I looked at, what could potentially cause us problems, and that's the not fulfilling the order on consent. In addition to that, I prioritized public safety needs much higher than other needs. And so my criteria scale speaks for itself.
Yeah.
But we have some really big, some highly ranked projects. And the one that I've asked Hernani to join us for are the sanitary sewer projects, as well as a couple of other, I guess, construction type projects. So if we can go into that conversation, Mayor, the sanitary sewer is order on consent, and it is something that we are probably ready to go, but we have a deadline. And that deadline is January of 2022.
It has to be done.
Has to be done. So
Yeah.
either we get moving or they haul me to jail. Either one.
Well,
And Hernani loves it when I say that. That's why he's smiling.
That's
Manny,
the
your mic is off.
Sorry, it's the cheaper option.
extension we just got.
Yes,
the
that's
extension
correct.
we got.
All right, Manny, why don't you walk us through
Yeah.
the land of sewer repair?
Sure. So as you may know, and I'll recap this for everybody, the village was hit with an order of consent many years ago, and the procedure was supposed to be a stepwise investigation and repair. First, it started with an investigation village-wide, where they identified the worst zones in the village to have the highest levels of inflow and infiltration. That was the metering study. Once those zones were established, they figured out, we're going to do a detailed investigation of the worst zone going to the not so worst zone, and it was supposed to have been where they investigate, let's say, zone 1. It's called metered areas, and there's more specifics to it. Just to keep it simple, I'll call it zone 1. So they would investigate zone 1 and then move on to investigate zone 2, and then zone 1 was supposed to get repaired. And while they're investigating zone 3, zone 2 would get repaired, and so on. So what happened was we investigated 4 areas so far out of the 7 that we needed to investigate. Those 4 areas were done in chunks of 2. So we did the first project, which was 2 areas, and then we did a second investigative project, which was the second 2 areas. And after that was done, we sought to get funding because we noticed how big the repairs needed to be, how costly they were going to be. We figured, okay, this is bigger than we thought. Let's go get some grant funding. And we did, with the assistance of Dan Starnoff, some of our grant writers. We were able to get funding, and also low interest loans, low interest EFC loans. That's going to help the village out as far as saving some money there.
Well, you said low interest, Manny. What's the interest rate on that?
Currently, I don't know, but it's better than any interest rate we're going to get from a bond.
It's
Dan can back me up on that, and maybe Augie too.
yeah, the state has a AAA bond rating, which is a little bit better than what our bond rating is. Plus the, I think half of it is at 0%, and then the remaining half is at the AAA bond rating rate. I have to
You
review.
can't get
my-
better than that. 0%, I'll take it any day.
It's like a loan from your mom.
So that's the kind of,
One question, can you identify where are the numbers here in this spreadsheet? So we start looking at them as you tell us the story. And I think most of the story we already know.
sure. If you want to look at, if you filter your spreadsheet by engineering, so you deselect them all and you just select engineer, you'll notice, and that'll filter it down for you. You'll notice that under sanitary sewer rehabilitation zones 8, 11, 13, and 14, it's $9 million.
The unfiltered is line 54 on the spreadsheet.
Yes, if you want to go down that, assuming you didn't change the order.
No, not for me.
Okay, because you could sort by name and all that kind of stuff. So assuming you didn't change the original order, it's line 54. Sorry, Victor, are you saying something? Your mic is muted.
Did we already bond part of that, Augie, last year?
I think I can answer that. I think we bonded probably the lateral grouting work that we did. We bonded, I'm sure we may have bonded some of the work Arcadis did, the investigative work, but I'm almost sure we bonded the lateral grouting, which was complete for the West Basin.
In order to apply for an EFC grant, you have to adopt, the board has to adopt a bond resolution
Right.
to indicate that there's local support, and this is a shovel-ready project, so, or there is local funding for the project should the EFC not come through, so.
And we've done that resolution already, right?
Yeah, we did that last year.
Why don't
So
the
we're
question
trying
was
to put,
specific, if Augie can look and tell us exactly how much we bonded for what, that'll be great, so we can move on. So please continue. I didn't want to stop you. Because I
Okay.
just think part of this was
Augie's looking that up right now, so why don't we continue and Augie will get back to us with the number.
Okay.
okay, so we're talking about doing the 9 million in this fiscal year and bonding whatever portion needs to be bonded.
After.
I'm
Is
sorry, Dan.
that, is that the bottom line here?
Well, I think
Well, the bottom line
bond-
is,
Let an Annie answer.
so the bottom line is we're about to go out to bid for the construction repairs of those 4 areas plus the West Basin. So that's 5 areas altogether. I expect that to come in somewhere between $7 and $9 million, say $8 million, give or take $1 million. And that's, I believe that number includes the monitoring of the project, which is about 10% of the construction.
Okay, so that's 5 out of 8 areas. What does the consent decree require us to do, all 8?
The consent decree requires us to do all 7 areas.
Well, 7 areas. So there's
Yes,
2 areas that
the
are not covered.
8th area that we're talking about, the West Basin, this was all found while we were doing the lateral grouting. It was not part of the original order and consent. This we're doing because we found it on our own.
That's
And
not my question, Hernani, that's not my question.
sure.
The question is, you have 5 areas that
Mhm.
you say that the 9 million will cover.
Yes.
Okay. That leaves 2 areas that are not covered. Have they been done,
3.
or do they need to be done as per the consent order? That's the question.
There are 3 areas that are left to be done. Those areas still need to be investigated and then subsequently repaired. We don't know what the amount of repairs are yet there.
So
Okay,
that can't,
I
so
think
they
the
have to be
question-
investigated, excuse me. The consent order is either they have to be investigated and done by the end of the year?
No, well, the investigation, the construction, and a CMOM at the very end all have to be complete by
Okay,
January 22.
hold it. Let me just answer each question, right? Do we only have to do 5 areas by the end of the year?
No,
We have to do all of them,
we have to do all of them.
We have to do all of them.
even the ones we haven't started.
So, but
Correct.
this price of 9 million only includes 5 areas.
For
Correct.
2 years.
That's what I was trying to get to, Tom.
I know, I'm crystallizing your
I'm
goal.
sorry, when I say end of year, I'm talking about our upcoming fiscal year, which is the subject of this conversation. Because you still need some time after we finish construction to do all the paperwork and reporting and everything else. So if we get the construction done by the end of this fiscal year coming up, that'll give our consultant at the time 6 months to get all the paperwork they need to have done for the DEC by January 22. Does that make sense?
So if I can translate what you've just said, for 2 to 3 of the areas, we have to do the investigation and the construction ASAP, and we don't have, and that hasn't been started.
Yes, I was going to get to that in the presentation.
Well, let's get there, so we move it along.
Okay.
You have 9 million for 5 areas, and then you have
Correct. I
3
didn't-
other areas that are not included. That
So
line
the
item.
3 other areas, the intent was now that we'd go out to bid for 3 things actually. We would get bidding for the construction or repairs of the areas that we already investigated and identified the defects. Secondly, we'd also go out for an RFP for the oversight of that repair work. And third, we'd go out for another RFP or award the RFP we already have for investigation of the 3 remaining areas. That would complete the investigative portion of this order and consent. We already have a quote from Arcadis. It's a little old. Last year, I reached out to them to see if they would still honor it, and they would late last year. We could still try and reach out and see if they'll still honor the same price without raising it, even though it's well over a year old. And they would finish off the investigative. I think it's $180,000, Jerry. Yeah,
It is.
186, something like that.
Yep.
So they would complete, if we award it to them, they would complete the last investigation of the 3 areas. If they finish that investigation before the year is out, which is doable, it's very doable if we award it soon. If they finish the investigation before the year is out, chances are the construction's still going on the other 4 areas. And if we had to, we could just add on, because it's a unit price bid, that repair. Now, remember what I said in the beginning of the conversation. We started with the investigation from the worst INI areas to the not so worst. So the last 3 areas will have areas and sections that need to be repaired, but we don't expect it to be as bad as what we've seen so far. So that's why the second half of this, or the last 3 areas, shouldn't cost us as much as the first 4.
But that's not in the budget, if I understand that.
Not
or is
right now,
that-
because we don't know what the impact is going to be. Yeah.
I understand that. So you have 9 million in the budget, and we're assuming that there's going to be at least another million or 2 million added to that, correct?
Probably more.
Okay, how much more? Is it 3 million?
I would probably say
Is
for
it-
the last 3 remaining areas, probably 3 million for construction, and don't forget we have $200,000 for the investigation of those 3 areas, and that 9 million doesn't include investigation of those 3 areas.
But we budgeted that 200,000 for the investigation of the last 3 areas. We just haven't awarded the contract.
You did budget that?
Didn't we budget? We did not, I thought we budgeted that for this current year. The year that's ending in 2 months.
Not in,
No.
not in our operating budget.
Okay.
No.
No.
So
And all of this can be paid out of our sewer fund. It won't affect the A fund, because this is all sewer related. This is exactly what the G fund was made for.
Yeah, the G fund and the sewer use fee was set in place or put in place in order to pay for all of this work that has to get done.
So instead of 9 million, we're at 12.5 million in round numbers. Is that a fair statement?
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised if it's around 12 to 14 million when all the dust settles.
So that all has to be bonded, but it can be paid for.
Low interest loans and everything else.
Well,
Yep.
but also it can be paid for out of the sewer fund, not out of other funds.
Exactly right.
I mean,
It doesn't affect the tax cap.
That's correct. That is correct.
Augie has the information that Victor asked for. He's gonna,
So
Right now, we're going to bond 2 projects, one which was started in 2015 with 762, 755.58. And the second project started in 2018 with 77,809.09. Those are the 2 amounts I have so far.
839,000.
839 was the first one?
Both together,
First one was
839,000.
762, 765.
Okay,
so
thank
that's for the investigation work we've done and we paid for, and now we're going to bond it after the fact.
That's bonded already.
That is correct.
But we haven't bonded it.
In the process of bonding it right now. After the budget hearing, I think on the 29th, is when we're meeting with bond counsel to issue the new bond.
So we expended the money and then we'll recoup it by a bond.
Correct.
You got it.
And the bond will be paid for out of the sewer fund.
Correct.
So we have basically another $850,000 in addition to the 2.5 million that we're going to bond in the next year for the rest of the work.
Okay. And what
Where did you get the 2.5 million?
12.5
Oh,
million.
12.5, yeah.
12.5.
So can I ask a question and share the screen for that? Because all that money that we're bonding, well, it's actually small compared to the larger, is for repair, right? In 2018, February, Arcadis presented these numbers. they said it would be about 4 million. And this is the West Basin, which you mentioned, and the 5 areas. So what you're, and they gave us a detailed, a detailed breakdown of this number because I asked for the breakdown of the 4 million. So what you're saying is that it's gone up now from 4 to 9 based on
Yes,
the
their estimates were off.
estimates that were off.
Well, they were very off. As far as the West Basin goes, their estimates were off by a factor of 3. They were lower by a third. It's a third less on their.
That's my point. Like in 2018, we were now, like 2 years and seeing this 2 years far. And they gave us a report how to complete. They say we have to finish the investigation. By 2018, 2019, we would have finished everything and then start the rehabilitation. Actually, no, the rehabilitation would have started 2018.
Like I said, the initial, like I said in my initial presentation, it was supposed to be investigate 1 year and then move on to the next zone and rehab what you already investigated, and that's what that schedule there shows. Investigation 1 year and rehabilitation the next. You see that the pattern in your graph in your chart there?
Yeah, no, but by this year they had kind of bundled it, that they would bundle all this in one repair and this in another. Now we're going to do it all together, and we have a year. So we better.
And that was 2018.
Okay. No, this was February 18. Then the contract for Arcadis was in October of that year. To get everything, all the bid ready to go in 90 days. Now that's what the contract says, 90 days. So we just can't delay this any further. We just need to pin down that number of 9 million. And then what you're saying is to bring it forward to this year, or break it in 2 years. I just want to kind of break this, how it's going to be reflected now in the capital spreadsheet that we have. So I'm going to stop sharing here.
Hernani, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
With the recent downturn in the construction world, do you think we might get a better price on a bid?
I don't think so. There aren't that many people who do this work. Matter of fact, the company that probably is going to end up bidding on this is going to come from out of state. I wouldn't be surprised if it's coming from like Ohio or Massachusetts or something like that. The kind of companies that do this on this scale, they're flying in their guys and they're keeping them up at hotels during the course of the work.
Really?
Yeah.
This is
There
countrywide.
also municipal contracts are being canceled left and right.
We'll see. When we bid it, we'll see.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll see.
all we can do is bid it and see what happens. It falls where the chips fall where they fall.
True that.
And if there is a stimulus package for shovel-ready projects, this is as shovel-ready as you're going to get.
Yeah.
So we
Right.
can benefit
So-
from that as well. I don't know. I just don't know.
Cutting to the chase, where we need to put the budget in the budget, $13 million. Is that what I hear?
For a 5-year program, yeah. For less than 5 years, yes. For this next fiscal year, I don't think we need that
No.
much.
We have to put it in and bond it.
We bonded after we finished spending it.
We can't spend 15 million or $13 million.
We don't have it.
If in terms of,
We're gonna have to bond it, and we have to get the work done at the end of the upcoming fiscal year, so that the paperwork for the DE.
I understand that. So you're going to spend roughly $13 million this year.
If we do everything according to the plan, yeah.
Well, we have to do it because
That-
we
Yeah.
got our deadline is January 2022,
Yeah.
January 2022.
That's right.
So we have to do it. We don't have a lot of choice here.
Yep.
Okay.
We knew this day was coming for years. I mean, we've discussed this for years.
It just fell on us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we change the table? That's what I want to do today. I think we're all here. This one. How do we change the table?
What table?
The spreadsheet that we have in front of us.
I don't see anything in it sharing your screen.
Okay.
No.
This one. Right?
Oh, we didn't. Yeah.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you mean? How do you change the table?
Are we bringing or we're starting
Right,
bring.
the 9 million goes to $13 million and you have to spread it out.
But
Years.
if you look at your line 53 and 54, that's 12 million right there.
Uh-huh.
And that
This,
doesn't, yes, that's
And
the
we-
two projects. That's
we
5
have-
areas right there.
we just have to move it this couple of years.
Correct.
That's the five projects is 12 million?
Yes.
We just bring it back.
No,
But that's including oversight.
the 12 million is for everything, isn't it?
No, 12, that only is for 5 areas is what I'm being told.
No, I think it was,
Hold on, let me,
8 million plus or minus a million for the
Yeah.
5 areas, plus 3 more million for the additional areas.
Yeah, I thought 12 million was the whole shooting match.
I did a presentation not long ago on this. Let me pull up my numbers on this, my revised numbers.
Holden, how long do you bond this? 30 years?
I think 20.
If they give it as a period properly used one, that's more than 15. I think it's more like 8.
I did a presentation on this several weeks ago during, I believe, a work session.
Yeah.
And I shared the revised tables back then, the revised tables that Arcadis provided us. So let me just pull that up.
Victor, you are correct. You just got to move that 3 million and 9 million underneath into column D,
I
as
would
you were
call it,
asking.
I would call it sanitary sewer rehabilitation.
Yep,
And put in the 12 million.
yep.
Boom.
Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Please.
I need Victor to stop share.
There you go.
So this is the presentation that I gave several weeks ago in the beginning of the month.
Yeah.
And if you recall, I explained how metered areas 8 and 13, Arcadis had lower numbers. There were several ratings that they gave us, 1, 2s, and 3s. They broke it down pretty simply, 1, 2s, and 3s. 3s being the worst type of breaks, cracks, and things like that. 2s being kind of middle of the ground, and 1 being like a low level concern. So the direction that we went in was to take care of all the 2s and 3s. Okay. And they came up with the 2s and 3s around $5 million for that. This is Arcadis's numbers. This is where I got their numbers from. And then this was revised from $5 million to $6 million for construction. Well, sorry, this was $5 million for construction and oversight, and it was raised to 6.5, so an additional $1.5 million. That $4 million, I'm not sure of. You're probably thinking of just structural ratings of 3, the worst case scenario, which was $3 million, probably plus oversight. That's where that $4 million that you came up with, Victor, that's probably where that came from. And then structural ratings or severities of a 2, you're at 4.3.
Okay.
So we are doing both 2s and 3s. I think this direction was probably given to us by the board a couple of years ago. That's how we came to proceeding with the project.
Okay.
And-
Fernani, forgive me for interrupting. The other spreadsheet on line 53 and 54 is $12 million. But that's only 4 areas or 5 areas? Or 6, or all 8 areas? I'm lost.
If I may, that's what I'm concerned, that Arcadis 2 years ago came and told us it was 4 point something. Now they have revised to 6. I don't understand how it doubles.
Again, it depends on,
It includes everything. If you had
yeah,
the previous slide on Arcadis had everything included.
Victor, I share your concern. What I'm trying to get to is one number to cover that will cover everything. All eight areas, it's 8 areas, correct, Karnani?
Yeah, me too. I think this one has the other areas below, and the Arcadias one include everything. I remember that, and I saw it share it a minute ago.
I understand the Arcadis numbers are different than what has been
Peter Nani's
proposed.
muted.
Okay, so what I'm looking at is for 5 areas, 9.3 plus the upcoming unknown.
And Hernani, when you say 5 areas, you got to use the numbers so that we can
Sure,
follow.
that's 8, 13, 11, and 14,
Okay,
plus the West Basin.
okay. So that's the first 3 items, the first three lines on this spreadsheet that on the spreadsheet that you have in front of us.
Correct.
West Basin and the 2 yellow highlighted lines.
Yes, so those 2 yellow highlighted lines were replaced with this number down here. Okay, so this is 8, 11, 13, and 14. That's 5.9, let's say 6 million for construction, another 10% for engineering oversight. That brings it to 6.6. And then I updated these numbers over here for West Basin. So 2.5 for rehab, 10% for oversight. That brings us to 2.7. You take the 2.7 and the 6.5, and you come up to about 9.2.
Okay, that's for 5 areas,
That's for 5 areas.
and that's everything in the 5 areas, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, and then but we have 3 other areas that we have to do by the end of the year as well, correct?
Correct. And we already have a price for investigation of those 3 areas.
I understand that, but you
Okay.
can't, for budgetary purposes, we have to have an idea of what we think it is, and you said that would be another.
Well, Arcadis already put it here. If you look at their number for 7, 9, and 10, they're looking at $3 million for those areas.
So based on their numbers and being accurate, you're talking about $5 million.
No, Dan, 9.3 plus 3
One way or
million.
another, we gotta arrive at a number that's a reasonable and thought out approach for a budget.
9.3 is what I understand, plus an additional 3 million.
How's it is? 12.4.
There you go.
12.4, but that doesn't give you all 8 areas.
Yes, it does.
Does.
So we have, follow me on the math here. 2.7 for West Basin. That's construction and oversight. 6.6 for metered areas 8, 11, 13, and 14. That's construction and oversight. Another 0.2 for the investigation of the next 3 areas. That's 200 grand. And then according to this table, assuming that the defects that they find in those last 3 areas are in concurrence with their estimates here shown on your screen, that's another 3 million. And that brings us to 12.5. There you go. 12.5.
There you go. And that's a guesstimate.
Yeah, because the last 3 areas are a wild card, but we don't expect it to be that crazy.
And we don't know what the bid's gonna be.
We don't exactly. But and these bid numbers that I'm giving you here of 6.6 million, that's based on what Arcadis had gotten from unit prices similar to the units that we're asking for, the items that we're asking for, on other contracts in other municipalities, which we expect the same players to be bidding on our project.
All righty. Is there more you want to, was there a presentation on this, or is that really
Yeah.
all we need to know?
Well, the presentation I gave earlier in the month.
Yeah.
And this is more just let's talk about the money. The money and you know, let's talk about the money and let's talk about schedule.
So it's money and schedule, but the reality is it's January of 2022. That's
Yes.
really when we need to get this done.
Yep.
That's it. That's just,
Okay, so we don't have a choice. We have to budget at least $12.5 million, which may or may not be in the ballpark. And it has to be done ASAP.
Yeah.
And it can be bonded and paid for out of the water fund. I understand that.
The sewer rent fee.
I mean, the sewer rent fee, excuse me. So the question is, for budgetary purposes, instead of the line item being in 5 years out, it has to be moved to this year.
Correct.
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 Okay, so that's what we need to do. So
Let's do it.
okay.
Okay.
Ah, man.
So,
And you can remove the zones. That complicates everything. It's sewer, sanitary sewer rehabilitation. We know it's all the zones because it'll include everything, right?
okay. What you could do is you could do sanitary sewer order on consent.
It says it all.
Sanitary sewer rehabilitation, I think we know.
Okay.
Okay.
Jerry, what's next?
Public safety. Let me pull up my spreadsheet. I'll give you a line. So, oh, I'm sorry, I have one other construction item. One other construction item is the Hunter Tier structural repair. On my criteria scale, I ranked that at the high point, very close to the sanitary sewer project. Sanitary sewer project was ranked at 385 points. Hunter Tier structural repair was ranked at 375 points. And my concern about the Hunter Tier, and Hernani can explain a little bit more about it, is that the structural repairs are going to get to a point where, if we don't consider them, where we have to close down the Hunter Tier until we make those repairs. So similar to this situation with the sewer, we will be forced to make repairs. Instead of controlling the timeline, we're forced to make repairs. So let me see if I can pull that up on the 5-year capital.
That's on line 96.
Thank you,
Thank you.
96. That's 269,000. Hernani, that's still somewhere in the ballpark?
We need to revisit that. That one's not as specialized as the sewers, so I don't know how competitive the pricing is on that right now.
And tell me about the New York State mandate on that one, because I learned
So
that from you.
a few years ago, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, New York State came out with a new law that all parking structures, all multi-leveled parking structures have to be inspected on a 5-year basis, and all defects have to be repaired. There was no mandate before. You did it as a responsible owner. And I think they found that not too many people were being responsible owners when it came to multi-level parking structures. So they passed this law. We're in our first cycle of the 5 years. And put it this way, within the next 3 years, you're going to be forced to repair these things anyway. It's better to repair it now. You guys can walk Hunter Tier parking anytime, and you can see that there's plenty of things that need to be fixed there. It's kind of obvious. You don't think you need to be an engineer to see everything that's falling apart.
But we haven't had this inspection and we're not under an order to repair.
No, a few years ago with Rob Umuter, we started that. That's when the law first came out.
Mhm.
And we already were aware of defects out there, so we tried to get ahead of the ball.
Mhm.
And we hired Antonucci Associates out of Pelham to do the investigation and recommendations. At that time, it was, please take a look at the stairs, take a look at this leak that we have going on, and let us know what you think. And then give us part of the same contract. Believe it or not, they gave us a great price. Part of the same contract was to come up with construction documents to do those repairs, not just for the investigation, but the construction documents. So these guys are getting into it, not knowing too much about what they're getting into as far as design and how many hours they're going to put into it. Well, they went out there and they took a look, and it was worse than anybody thought. The village approved some additional investigation. They performed the additional investigation. They came up with criteria, and we presented it to the board back then. I think the reports were handed out back then about what their findings were, and they gave you 2 scenarios. I think one scenario, if memory serves me correctly, was, okay, let's put a Band-Aid on this and find out where we're going to be in 5 to 6 years or so, because we don't know what we want to do with Hunter Tier parking lot as a whole.
Yeah, I remember that.
The other approach was, let's just fix it all, and you don't have to worry about revisiting it in 5 years. Well, it's been 2 years since that report.
All right. My question though is that there hasn't been a state inspection and an order to repair under this new 5-year. So we're not under a deadline the way we are with the sewer laterals.
Correct. Well, the state doesn't inspect it.
We need to do it because we
Yeah.
need to.
It's self-policing.
You know,
Okay.
the,
Got
We can't even use
there's
half of
part
the
of the
lower.
middle, there's part of the middle of the bottom floor that you can't use anymore.
I know.
Because the stuff falling down and
No, it's a mess.
the people who live on the avenue here, a lot of them buy the overnight parking for there. So,
Yeah.
so if it falls and it gets to a point where it's no longer tenable, it's gonna, hurt the function of village government, the firehouse.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that it needs to be done. I'm just trying to see what kind of deadline we're under.
Yeah, there's no order on consent for it.
Got it.
It's-
That's all.
This would be your second priority, Jerry?
It would have to be. It would have to be.
Also a chunk of concrete could hit somebody in the head.
It's a bad thing.
We have, the contract is still ongoing with Antonucci Associates. We just never pulled the trigger on the next phase, what we want them to design. They haven't been bothering us to come up with a decision. But if we want to advance this and continue with the contract we already have with them, we need to make a decision.
Okay.
Then the other items, Mayor, are of course, the bonding of the police cars, which were taken out of the operating budget. That has to be added to our spreadsheet on our capital, 5-year capital. In addition to that, there were public safety items in the fire department that were going to be bonded. And then we had, of course, we do a regular rotation of replacing trash trucks and plow trucks. And maybe we can extend it 1 year and throw some money into repairs in that regard. So those are items that I just haven't had time to talk to Tony about. If we can actually stretch that out and maybe just skip a year in our regular replacement schedule of those kinds of vehicles, all public safety type of
Do we
issues,
buy a garbage truck a year?
Every 2 years.
every 2 years.
Every 2 years. And they're like, what, $500,000?
Uh,
260,
600.
280.
Oh,
I
no,
think the last
280,
290.
300, somewhere around 300,000.
$300,000?
Cheap.
Plenty of room for the family.
Yep. So, as far as everything else, it ends up being, discretionary. We have to do the work regarding the order consent. I believe that we have to do the Hunter tier replacements because it's really Hunter tier repairs, pretty bad shape. And then we have to focus on if we can bond our public safety vehicles.
And we should be hearing back from Steve in a couple of months about the fire department stuff.
Yeah, that would help us.
That would help, yeah.
It doesn't seem practical for us to go into multi-year. We have a multi-year plan. The department heads have provided the Board of Trustees with all the information. We just have to focus on trying to get through this year. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a different situation
6
you
weeks
know,
ago.
when we put this, when we put this capital budget plan together. We thought we were going to really have the ability to make some positive change. I don't know how to do that now.
A related but other subject, is the state still gonna be doing the bridge in 2021?
Mhm. Yeah, the state just awarded their design build contractor, right?
Yep, we had a meeting with them today.
Yep. The state's got plenty of money, apparently.
What happens, right?
I think this money, the state's project was already funded and everything before
Yeah.
all this hit.
They have money in the bank.
All right.
Okay, so we're gonna take the the sewer project, the 100 tier, the police vehicles, and the fire hoses.
Those are top priority, without talking about replacement of public works vehicles. Those are top priority items, Dan.
Okay, and the public work vehicles are singular or multi?
They're typically multi. I'm gonna pull the spreadsheet up. Tony's very good at asking for replacements. It would be 1, 2, 1 salt truck, 1 sanitation vehicle, a pickup truck, a roller, those kinds of things. So at least 2 vehicles, Dan, at least 2 vehicles in 2021.
You're gonna ask him if we could delay that?
I'm going to ask him if we can.
Okay.
I have a question before we lose Tom for the evening.
Okay.
And thank you, Tom, for pushing that email I sent to Joint Waterworks. And we got the reply back, and I just was able to download it today. I'll look at it, but it looks very helpful to understand where we are. Because my question is, shouldn't the waterworks, we need to bond 5.1 based on their info? Shouldn't that be here? Based on their info, if I can share my screen here, give me a sec. I'll go quick here. This is let me share, I'm sorry, let me go back here because I need to share my screen, which is this one. They said we need to bond for this year of the 11, I'm sorry, from the 19 million, 5.1 will be in 2020. That includes 1.3 from the UB field facility.
Mhm.
And that's, David explained that that's using one of the EFC funds, grants, the filtration plant, the engineering, the phase 1 of that, and the Wingfoot plant. So that is the tank. That's 3 projects, and that is out of, if I can, let me share another one here very quickly, which is should be this one. No, that, I'm sorry. Should be. That should be this one. Can you see it? No.
No, you haven't opened it.
No, let me do it right here. Share screen. No.
That's Village of Mamaronek.
Share screen. Actually, the first one, sorry. There we go. We should be bonding all this.
It's not on, so Victor, if I can share, it's not on my sheet because it's not a project that I manage.
Okay,
And it is paid for directly out of the
sewer fund, water fund.
water fund. So, and so the spreadsheet that was put together by Ellen from the budget committee, who helped really compose everything, had everything that we would be managing, that I would be overseeing and managing with my department heads, with the department heads and the board of trustees. So that's why it's not on there. Of course, it can go on there and you can discuss it, but
I think it's important to remember too, I think that the 6% increase in water rates was meant to cover the cost of capital expenditures this year, principal and interest. So it doesn't, obviously, I mean, the encumbrance of the debt goes against us, but the payoff of how the debt is paid off does not go to our tax rate, it goes to the water rate.
Right. My point is that in some place, this project should be reflected in our capital budget. All the other municipalities do it like that as well.
Maybe we should reflect it. Maybe it should be reflected, and I would be happily corrected if this is wrong. It should be reflected in the water fund. You know what I mean, Ogie?
The sewer projects then should be then listed with the sewer fund. So that's why
Yeah, I think so.
one way
That
or
makes
the other.
sense. You know what I mean? But I could be, listen, I'm not an accountant, but could we look at that? If we reflect that, you know, the 12.5 million for the sewer fund in the sewer fee and reflect the capital projects for the Westchester Joint Waterworks in the water fund.
But what are we talking about? Accruing the liability? And when you say reflect, we could put as a footnote in front of the sewer fund, just explaining what the obligation is going to be.
Yeah.
But not to accrue it in the actual fund.
Right.
Basically, all bonds in the village municipalities are off balance sheet accounts.
Okay.
You know, we account for it as general long-term debt. They're not actually reflected in the fund.
So it doesn't matter where the bond is paid out of this funding source?
Correct.
I think you're just talking about the physical layout of the actual budget, not
Yeah,
any
that's right.
funding scenarios.
Right, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, what I'm talking about, I think what Victor is getting at too is where it's laid out in the budget, so people can turn to the water fund.
We have a description of what the sewer fund does. We could add it as a note in the sewer fund and what the payments are over 5 years
And,
and what the project cost is gonna be,
and we do the same thing for the,
water project,
for the sewer project and the water project.
yes.
And Mayor, we can add a separate page for utility improvements. Since they're paid out of, you know, we just add a separate tab on our master spreadsheet that demonstrates the utility improvements that need to be
Absolutely.
made.
Makes sense.
If we want to illustrate, we can illustrate, obviously. That's, I think, what Victor was asking, right? Something like that?
The point of having them is because you have to, you have to account also for the principal and the,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end. What did you say, Victor?
you have to reflect that you're going to be paying for this as well.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Any other projects we need to talk about?
No, I don't think so.
So,
Does the budget, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Does the budget committee have any comments? I mean, they're
I
supposed
think
to be
they're
part
in
of
their own meeting.
They're meeting. They have a meeting now. They're
They're
not
not-
on this
They're
because they
not
have their
on,
own
there's no
meeting.
attendees.
Okay,
No attention.
so, okay. I don't have anything more on the budget, on the capital projects, but I do have some other questions on the budget.
Okay.
Okay, I just read Chief Primrose's answers to Jerry's questions, and found it exceedingly disappointing. The issue, there are two substantive issues. One was the house improvements, which is basically what he represented on the first call when we was here was basically mostly the windows. The other items that are suggested in his email are very small, minor items. You need something to maintain the houses. You have $70,000. Am I correct, Jerry? We have $70,000 still in that line.
That is correct.
You know, and the windows are a big part of that. And I would like to take the windows out. Either reduce it to $30,000, which would be able to maintain 5 houses for a year pretty well, actually more than pretty well. But if, you know, if you have a leak, a pipe burst, etc., those are the types of things that should be being done, not other things that are desirable but not essential. The same issue has to do with the, well, let's stop there and see if everybody agrees or disagrees.
You're talking about, Dan, you're talking about almost at the bottom of page 74 of 179, account number 34100409.
You know,
Plug in, Laura, if I recall, we have 70,000 left in that, right?
yes.
Okay.
And his comment is that the windows were built with the least expensive wood, desirable, and left a non-desirable approach for people to want to stay in the house, etc. I can sympathize with all of that, but it's not the type of thing that in this era, we should be funding.
Jerry, are those windows in the new firehouse he's talking about?
You know,
Yeah.
I'm looking at it's the Palmer Avenue firehouse, but he's talking about the window casings, not the whole window, the casings around the windows were done poorly.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Dan on this one. You know, they, come on.
So I'd like to suggest that reduction. And there's one other that I'd like to suggest in the, last year there was some $20,000 that for pagers or phones or whatever they were trying to, upgrade. But that was done. And this year it still has an increase over last year. So it means that they have some of the pagers that is necessary in case the county shuts this burn system down, and they still can be operative. I would like to, remove the increase, not take the line item out, but remove the increase so it's not even with last year, which is about another $9,000, if I'm correct, Jerry.
They did that already.
No, they reduced it, but they didn't take it out. They didn't reduce it to the same thing as last year's, if I recall correctly.
We were gonna bond, we were gonna leave 21,000 in there to spend, and we're gonna bond the 9,000 for new pagers.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And this is because the county system is about to go offline. So we have to have these pagers.
Yeah,
This isn't like a discretionary thing.
Yeah. I could go with you on the windows, Dan, but if somebody, if it gets to the point where somebody didn't get a call or somebody, I just don't want to play with that.
I assume these pagers are they given to individual people, or are they shared the way the radios are shared?
No, they're individual people.
Nora, actually, the Chief Costa sent, I've just opened it, 6:32 sent a long detailed memo. He is really the to-go guy. He knows this very well. I just try to understand this, but I'm just going to go to the last line where he says, we need this. That's right. I'm requesting that this budget line would not be adjusted. So whether we pay for it or we bond it, I think
We need to do it.
that's not for $9,000.
It's like the turnout gear. You got to buy it.
Right.
So Dan and I are in agreement about the windows. How do the rest of you feel about the windows?
I agree.
I mean, as long as the windows are functional and as long as the casing isn't going to cause some other leakage that's going to cost, be a conservation problem and a bigger repair down the line, I think it should be deferred for a year.
Victor?
Yes, I agree.
All right.
Okay.
So we bring that line to 30,000?
Bring that line to 30, the boss just said here.
Okay.
The capo di tutti capo.
Okay. My iPad is fading, even though it's plugged in for charging. It says that it has only a couple of minutes left.
That's my problem as well.
All right, so let's call this a night, guys. We made some progress. Yeah, this is, I've been doing this a long time. This is by far the worst year I ever saw. It's awful. It's
awful.
It's just.
But
yeah, this is quite a welcome to the budget process for me, let me say.
Yeah, Kelly, this is a tough one.
This is bad news. But let's all say a prayer that it doesn't get any worse. And there were over 200 and I think, what was it last time I looked, 30 something people in this community that have COVID. 26 people have died out of Sarah Newman. So, we are not unaffected, so besides the monetary loss, there's a lot of sick people, and you look through it, and it's sad because it's people and it's families, so.
Okay.
Let's just, thank God we're all healthy and our families are healthy. Thank you all for your hard work. Staff, thank you all for your hard work. It wasn't easy for anybody. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you and good night, everybody.
Thank you, Augie, Laura, Dan, goodbye. And Jerry.